God bless you, World Missionary Evangelism family. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. We are truly honored and blessed to have you. You know, right now, God is doing some amazing things. And we thank God for your prayers. We thank God for your support. And we thank God for what He's doing around the world. We mention quite a few countries here from time to time. We mention what God has done in Africa, what God has done in Asia, in Latin America, and even here in the States, with the amazing work that God is doing with our veterans and with the women's shelter that we have. But we also do work in Eastern Europe. Now, when we speak about Eastern Europe, we have to make the distinction. Eastern Europe is a lot different than Western Europe. It's a place that's bitter cold. It's a place where there's quite a bit of poverty. And two of the countries that we're in, among what we're doing there, is Romania and Moldova. And we like to kind of bunch it together, but it's really not together because they're two separate countries. But we're doing some work there. And one of the things we've recently done there is build a church. And this is going to be a great complex. It's going to be used for disaster relief. It's going to be used for whatever work needs to be done in that area, as far as ministry, as far as humanitarian aid. So God is doing some amazing things. And one of those such places is Romania and Moldova. So as you pray for what God is doing through our missions work, don't forget to pray for Romania and Moldova. Well, today we're looking at Jeremiah chapter 18. Jeremiah 18 tells us the story of the potter's house. Now, the Bible begins in Jeremiah chapter 18 by saying, "The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Arise and go to the potter's house, and there will I cause thee to hear my words. And when I went to the potter's house, and behold, a work on the wheels, and the vessel he made of clay was in his hand, and the hand of the potter. So he made it again another vessel, as seemed good to the potter to make it." And you know, it's amazing to me, because as I was thinking about this story, I was thinking sometimes humans tend to have attitudes, tend to be prideful, tend to be boastful. But all we are is recycled dirt. All we are is recycled from the ground. God is the one who makes us, forms us, puts worth in us, puts value in us. It's God who has created us and made us to what we are today, and He loves us. And again, I said He's put value on us. And so when you look at a vase, when you look at something that was formed and shaped and made, a thing of beauty, a thing of art, during the process, it's not that. During the time of construction, it's not that. I was going through our city the other day, and the downtown area, and you can see skyscrapers going up. And it's amazing to see these beautiful skyscrapers once they're up. But during the time of construction, they're not all that amazing to look at. They're not all that impressive until you see the finished product. And as you look at people, I tell people, if you're not amazed by what you see, don't worry, because it's not the finished product. God isn't through with me. God is still forming, and God is still working. Give the potter time to create and to mold and to make and to form into the image that He has desired for you. And so, as Jeremiah, who was the weeping prophet, Jeremiah, who was a prophet who spoke to the people, and the people didn't listen. He was known as the weeping prophet because of his tears, because of the tears that he shed for the people. These were people who were stiff-necked people. These were people who were stubborn. These were people who didn't want to listen to the message that God had given him. And so God takes Jeremiah and shows him this work of the potter. And he shows him how the potter is forming the clay and how he's going to make something beautiful out of that clay, that lump of mud, that lump of dirt that doesn't seem like it's any good for anything. He's going to show him how it's going to turn into a work of art. And so God is letting Jeremiah know that his words are not going to be in vain. That even though the people are not listening, even though the people aren't responding, God is still working. God is still moving. We've mentioned that in many of our programs and many of our broadcasts here, how even when we can't see God, we know that He's working. Even when we can't see the finished product, we know that God is still working. We know that God is still moving. One of the things that amazes me is when we look at Ezekiel, and Ezekiel sees the angels, sees the throne room of God. One of the things that stands out to me when Ezekiel sees this is there's a lot of movement. There's a lot taking place. There's a lot of detail when we look at Ezekiel's, and we're seeing everything that he's detailing, and it's quite a bit. It's a lot to take in. And on a later program, we'll discuss about Ezekiel's vision. But what impresses me is that Ezekiel sees the angels as lightning flashes. He's seeing them move as lightning. That means that there's activity. That means that there's something that's being done in heaven. Even though here we can't see it, even though here we can't feel it, but we know it's taking place. We know that God is working. And so this is what God is showing Jeremiah. Even though the people are stiff-necked and stubborn, even though it seems like they're impossible to reach, God is showing Jeremiah that He is going to make them into the image that He wants to make them. So we're going to come back and we're going to continue to look at this. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. So right now we have a very important announcement. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
For almost 6 decades, world missionary evangelism has been involved in sharing the good news of salvation through Jesus Christ. Going to many places where people have never seen a Bible or heard the Word, reaching out in other regions where Christians are a small minority, our native missionaries have fearlessly joined the spiritual battle to save souls and transform lives. Each day, people come to know Jesus through this mission, and they're baptized in His name. Those who are baptized become part of a Christian fellowship that impacts communities and brings light to dark regions. Programs like this prove that the evangelism in world missionary evangelism is not just a part of a name. It defines our mission, our focus, and is the heart of our work.